Hello everyone and welcome to episode 12 of Abacare Recovery's Listen Up podcast. Today we've got the pleasure of having Eddie Gorman, Harbour service manager with us. Hi Eddie, how are you?
Good, Ed, good.
Thanks for coming along today. So just for any viewers just now, we're now on our 12th episode of our podcast. We're planning releasing 2 new Listen Up podcasts per month now, and we're doubling up in last year's numbers. We'd encourage MD to share this on your social medias, follow us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, whatever you're listening on or watching on today. So thank you. So Eddie, service manager at Harbour Ayrshire, former Abacare employee as well. We worked together a good number of years back, and former violence reduction unit worker, would that be?
Yep, that's right.
Your career to date. If you wanted to start as Eddie, you're somebody that's in recovery as well, aren't you? Do you want to tell us a wee bit about what it was like in your active addiction and how you got into recovery?
Yep. So a long journey through addiction. Starting from a very young age. When I was 11 years of age, I'd brought up in an alcoholic home, and my dad died in a terrible boating accident when I was a wee boy, and I drove my dad mad to take me fishing, and the boat capsized.
Okay.
And my dad died in that terrible boating accident. So at 11 years of age, Ed, I've got all this weight of the world on my shoulder, and I started using substances to deal with that, because there wasn't any therapy or counselling away back then when that happened.
Yeah.
So I started basically self-medicating with substances at that age, and that was kind of what I'd done for the next 30 odd years, or 34 years. So I was in active addiction for 34 years. 20 of the years I spent, or 18 and a half of the years I spent behind bars. And even then, I still couldn't function without some sort of substance. So after I was in prison and something happened to me, it was like a moment of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, there must be a better way of living life than the way I'm living it. And so what that is, Eddie, that's a window of opportunities, you know. Right?
Yeah.
Now, I had thousands of them before that previously, but this one, there was something different about this one. But actually, when I got out, there was no support in place for me when I got out. So I went right back into active addiction and the lifestyle that I was living at that time. But there was something different, because that experience that I'd had in prison never ever left me after that.
Mm-hmm.
That was always at the back of my mind. And eventually, when I was ready to throw the towel in, that desperation, I was introduced a solution. So I was desperate to stop using, literally thousands of times. I mean, in the last 17 years of my addiction, I would stop twice a week. Do you know what I mean? They called me Eddie Willpower in the jail. Do you know what I mean? And I couldn't stay off it, Ed. So I was desperate thousands of times, and the model of recovery I used, which is a 12-step program, was in my house for 30 years. My stepfather, Big Jim, died 33 years sober. My mother passed away 30 years sober. So that solution was there for 30 years, but the two of them never came together at the same time. And I believe that's what's going to happen. For the magic to happen, you need to be in a place where you're ready to access support, and the support needs to be provided for you. So I believe that the two of them came together in end of 2010, and I came into recovery through that.
Yeah. So 2010 in Ayrshire, what did recovery look like back then? Because I remember myself from Ayrshire myself, you know, and I didn't know much about fellowships, 12 steps, or anything like that. You knew about AA, you'd heard AA, I thought that's where old men went. It was a kind of social kind of club and stuff, never understanding recovery. And I remember using with a friend one day, and he had went to a CA meeting in Irvine.
Mm-hmm.
And he come back from it, and we were kind of preparing to use together and stuff. And I says, what was that thing like you went to? He was like, rubbish. I mean, I never asked any more about it, you know, that kind of thing. Is like, what did recovery look like in the Ayrshire area at that time?
It was very sparse.
Yeah.
So I had left prison. I'd been out of prison for about probably 15 months. And I phoned somebody who'd been in recovery. You're right, at that time there wasn't. The addiction service was it was across in for the chemist in Eglinton Street. It was upstairs. What was the name of that again? Anyway, it was doctor.
Mm-hmm.
There was one doctor, and everybody that was in recovery or everybody that was in addiction, was on methadone.
Yeah.
we were all on the methadone, and I get I phoned somebody. So the recovery was very sparse. It was only, you're right, it was only sometimes you've seen people maybe going away to Christian rehabs and stuff like that. But basically that was it. And that one service, it was a Nervin, the statue service, which was Nervin. And basically I had to battle to get off my medication because I phoned somebody up and they says, look, I want to come to a meeting. And I ended up going to a fellowship meeting. At the time there wasn't any fellowship meetings apart from in Ayrshire.
Yeah.
And I got took through to Glasgow and I went to a couple of meetings and I went to a couple of A meetings at first, which I liked. They were very friendly. It was like people who kind of understood what was going through. But my sister who took me to my meeting, she says, you'll need to go somewhere where you can get identification.
Yeah.
Now, fortunate enough for me, I've got a nephew who's in recovery, who's long-term recovery now. My nephew's Charles is over 20 odd years sober. He's amazing. And it was strange. I'll tell you a wee bit about that experience I had with him. So when I went away, Charles is doing the stuff that I was doing. And he was in the madness, and I came back and he was 5 year clean. Now I'd never seen, there was nobody for lifestyle or from my family who'd ever get out that lifestyle. And Charles had, and every time I left him, Ed, it was just like I felt a wee bit happier than when before I bumped into him. Now what was happening, I know what was happening now. See the energy, the passion, the zest for life that he had.
Infectious.
That was shining out on me. That's the attraction that we see in recovery. So after the couple of bumps into Charles and the experience I had with Charles, I phoned my sister and she took me to a couple of meetings, and I ended up eventually went to a 12-step fellowship up through in Glasgow, and I walked in. It was the first time. See, all my life I had experienced a sense of separation.
Yeah.
And I walked into this meeting, this 12-step fellowship meeting, and it was the first time in my life where I ever felt that connection that I'd been lacking or looking for all my life, and that was why I used substances to try and create that connection. And I left that meeting that night saying to myself, see, whatever I've got to do, I'm going to do what I've got to do to stay in recovery.
Yeah. And were you still on a script at that time, or were you abstinent then? How did you get abstinent?
So no, I was on methadone at that time. So I worked alongside my addiction worker at that time, who was good, but they had never seen anybody getting clean either. So they were very, very apprehensive when I was asking them to get reduced off my methadone, basically because they'd never seen any outcomes. You know what I mean, at that time, and so they were apprehensive, but the guy did support me, and I was getting at him, so I kind of was doing it myself as well. I was roosting a wee bit, kind of know every time I was telling him I was taking 5, I was doing 10, and I'm a big coward, so I ended up going right down to 3 mil before I eventually got off it. But the difference was with this, Eddie, because I'd came off it before and I'd been clean before, but at times I'd been clean before, the withdrawals and the rattles was horrific. So I thought it was going to be like that. But the difference this time was I was round about people who had that experience, who were supporting me through that journey. And eventually a guy says, Betty, why don't you pick a date, put it down and see how you go on? And that was an amazing experience itself. You know, like, by the time I was ready to come off it, I'd actually 500 mil saved up. Know that just in case stuff, you know what I mean? Just in case my recovery doesn't work for me. And the very last day I was ready to put it down, I says to my stepfather, Big Jim, who I ended up when I came into recovery, I was a carer for Big Jim. Big Jim got diagnosed with dementia, and I always say this, Ed, it was the greatest gift that I've ever had in my life. To this day, I've never had an experience like it as looking after Big Jim. I learned so much off him. Jim was a spiritual giant. He was just a big gentle man, good man, and Jim taught me so much. And the time that I was ready to put my methadone down with two 250 ml bottles, and I gave him one, and I took one, and we went through the toilet, and we poured it down the toilet, and when I flushed it away, I looked up, and I was just watching the methadone swirling away in the toilet. I looked up and I seen Big Jim's face, and he just looked at me and he said, I've never been so proud of you, son.
Wow.
It's a very, very powerful experience, Ed.
Yeah. And attending the fellowship, sponsorship program, blah, 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 everything that's suggested in that takes you ahead where you're in a place that you are today, Eddie, regarding kind of, which we're going to speak about, you're kind of getting into a career in this kind of field, and obviously a big part of that is working for Harbour and the service at Harbour's given to the people of Ayrshire, because I always keep a keen eye on Harbour, because it's a service that I feel could have helped me if it was there at the time. But you spoke there as well, Eddie, about being ready. You've maybe had the kind of moments of clarity and opportunities, but it's about being ready and being finished and being willing to make the changes.
Absolutely. The transitional period can be really difficult.
Yeah.
No views. When I got 11 days clean, and I did, and I had to travel to Glasgow every day.
Yeah.
I had to get to meetings in Glasgow every single day. I had to go and meet up my sponsor. I built a relationship up with him. And that transitional period can be really difficult because he asked me when I got to 11 days clean, when was the last time he was 11 days clean? And I had to go back to Eddie when I was a wee boy at 11 years of age.
Okay.
I remember the last time in 11 days. So if you come into recovery, and I'll tell you what happens, Ed, right? If you're using substances to deal with issues that's going on in your life, what happens is a trauma, whatever the case may be, you don't pass through the emotional development stages. Basically, you don't grow up.
Yeah.
Right. So when I came into recovery at 45 years of age, I put the substances away and I had the emotions of a 11-year-old boy. Do you know what I mean? And I was a carer for my dad, and I had a wee business. I started a wee business. I was in a relationship, and it can be overwhelming. But because of the support I had, the people around about me, the role models I had around about me at that time, they guided me through that, Eddie, and I embarked on that 12-step journey. And what I was doing was dealing with the stuff in my past, looking at that stuff in my past, trying to make sense of it. Understanding that the things that happened to me as a child, everybody that was round about me was trying their best with what they had at that time.
Yeah.
The mistakes that I'd made and the people that I'd harmed, the God's honest truth was I wasn't that person. That was a lifestyle that I ended up in. You know what I mean? Nobody's fault. It was me that got myself on that journey. And I had to look at all that stuff, and I had to go into stand up and making amends for all the harms that I caused my community and my family and stuff like that as well. And so that I didn't have to look back, Eddie, because my journey was going forward. It wasn't going back. And eventually when I started to make my amends, my life started to take off, you know what I mean? And I learned tools, some strategies, coping strategies, healthier coping strategies to deal with what life was going to throw at me going forward. And that's really where my journey started in employment.
Yeah. That's the kind of recovery part of it. Where did you start out when you were looking to get involved in this kind of line of work and stuff? Where did that start for you?
Everything I've got in my life today, right? I mean, everything, right, is because of what I do in recovery.
Yeah.
It all started in my recovery journey. I learned to do so much in my committees and fellowships, and I learned how to let other people have their points of view and no feel really challenged when somebody didn't agree with everything I said and all that stuff, Eddie. You know that, mate. There can be a lot of pain involved in that.
Yeah.
But basically, to learn to grow up in the fellowship. And the fellowships are a bridge. They're a bridge to life. And what I'd done is all the tools that I'd learned in the fellowship, I tried to take into my own life. No, one of the lines in my lectures says, a better demonstration these principles lies before us, our homes, occupations and affairs. Yeah. So I learned these principles. I learned how to live. I learned how to have integrity and honesty and dignity and stuff like that. And then I tried to bring that into my workplace. But I was actually taking a boy through a 5th step, and he got a phone call saying that the violence reduction unit was taking 30 ex-offenders to the Commonwealth Games in 2014 when the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. And the guy who I was working with gave me the heads up. He says, and he's on the phone call, he says to the fella that phoned, it was Jado actually phoned him up and says, can Big Eddie come as well? Because the guy that he was phoning was wee Eddie. And he says, I will go along and wait along for an interview. And I got an interview with an inspector of the police. So it was the first time, Eddie, we had an interview with the police where my reply was no comment. But that's where my journey started. It was just by chance. But because of the work I was doing in recovery, that gave me the opportunity to do something there. I went to the VRU. I seen what they were trying to do. They were about prevention rather than detention. They understood the causes and conditions of how people end up in criminality and crime and criminality and addiction and stuff like that. And I just thought to myself again, I'm going to be involved with this somewhere along the line.
Yeah. And where did that take you?
I ended up going to the Commonwealth Games, which is a brilliant experience. I mean, a year later, I got offered a role to be a mentor which became, it was Braveheart Industries, it was called at the time, but that had connotations to another organisation, so they kind of changed it to Street and Narrow. The powers that be changed it to Street and Narrow and worked in a couple of Kate industries. It was about getting people who had contact with criminal justice for violence, previous conviction for violence, and they couldn't get into the workplace. So I mentored the young men and women for the East End of Glasgow and which gave them opportunities to try and get them into employment. So that was the start of me kind of learning how to support people through that journey, Eddie. Actually, not just the journey of coming out of addiction, but the journey of trying to get people into employment.
Yeah. And I think I remember back then was it the kind of the food as well, wasn't it? And Partick and stuff.
It was great with a big Airstream, big silver Airstream in Partick,
Yeah,
big massive 30-foot trailer. It was fantastic. It was a
yeah.
galley kitchen. It was really, really well set up.
Mm,
Cost a lot of money to buy, I think, actually.
mm,
But we were serving high end street food for the cafe in Partick,
yeah.
for the Airstream in Partick.
So as your recovery is progressing over the kind of time, Eddie, and developing a career and stuff, what was your kind of next move? Where did you go for the violence reduction unit?
So from that role, I ended up working. It was another project to the violence reduction at the time. They were partnered up with Medics Against Violence,
Mm,
which
mm,
was another
yeah,
charity who did some amazing work in our community. Massive, massive charity now, but they started similar time with the VRU and they'd partnered up. And Medics Against Violence, Christine Goodall, who's the CEO, she wanted to do a project in the hospitals. So it was like an intervention project. So anybody who attended accident emergency, and it wasn't a medical issue, it was non-medical, like for
mhm.
any social issues, like it was violence that they were doing. But when I started working on it, I kind of changed it around a wee bit because I wanted to get involved with
Yeah,
addiction, which is interpersonal violence
yeah,
as well. So anybody that turned up non-medical that the doctors or the nurses couldn't treat, and it was maybe homelessness, suicide attempts, mental health, addiction, any social issues, immediate interventions in the hospital. So that was a Navigator project,
amazing.
and I went to work with the Navigators. The project had been formed, but I was there at the very beginning. Inspector Keith Jack, he was the lead on that project. Really great guy to work for. The two inspectors that worked for, really good role models, really
Yeah.
decent people, and wanted to make a difference. And you want to work for people like that, don't you? So I
Mhm.
learned so much off him. In fact, the very first time I ever met Keith, when I went to work with him, he says to me, he says, if you turn up at your work every day, he says, you're in the top 90% of the work population. He says, see if you're effective when you're there. He says, you're in the top 96%. He says, so all I ask you to do is turn up and do what you're supposed to be doing. And kind of
Yeah,
that's all I done, Eddie. I just kind of,
yeah,
I've got a wee saying that I say to people that I'm mentoring now or some of the staff, chop wood and carry water.
yeah,
Just do what you're asked to do, man, and just see where your journey takes you. And that kind of opened the doors for me because I started to get a bit of confidence on what I was doing there, Eddie, and I was doing interventions in the hospital and I enjoyed that, and it suited
mhm,
my nature of about the impact. Some of the impact we had on people was phenomenal, and I ended up getting a promotion in there and going to be a regional supervisor, which I didn't like, by the way, because it stuck me in the office, and I ended up
yeah,
doing it for
mm,
6 months, and then I went, I'm going back to be a navigator again,
mhm,
and I went back to being a navigator. But what I didn't know, Eddie, was that when I was a regional supervisor, I was learning the skill set that I needed to do the role that I'm in today, which is a project manager, which has happened to me on my journey, by the way.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
it's amazing work, isn't it? The navigator stuff in the hospitals and stuff like that as well. And as we mentioned earlier, you had a cameo appearance at Abigail, didn't you? I remember welcoming you in your first day. And I always knew of you Eddie, anyway, do you know what I mean? Growing up down in Ayrshire and stuff. So you came in, how long did you come to Abigail for? Was it sessional for a period,
I
wasn't it?
think it's about 4 months,
4 months or
3 or
something?
4 months it was. What
Yeah.
happened is I was in the street and arrow role was a really challenging role.
Mhm.
A really challenging role. It was like working full on in a food truck, you know what I mean? Which was
Mhm.
good and it was great for my development, but it had a shelf life for me as well. And I actually resigned twice. And the spectre of Ian Murray had got me back twice. The third time I left, I says, Ian, I says, I'm leaving. I says, you're not getting me back. So he says, right, okay, absolutely fine. Whatever you need to do, I'll support you to do it. And I've contacted Liam and I
Yeah.
asked Liam if there's any work going in Abacare. And I went to work with Abacare for 3 months and it was great for me, actually.
Yeah.
It was good to see the work getting done in Abacare, which stands us in good stead now because as the project manager with Harbour or service manager with Harbour, we refer a lot of people onto your service and
Lovely.
we support working good partners. We've got a good working relationship with Abacare and
Yeah.
the staff in it, and we refer to it and we get referrals from you as well. So I know what you do in Abacare. I
Mm.
knew it's an absence-based organisation, which really suits the needs of the people that we are supporting, Eddie.
Yeah. No, and that kind of for us as well for Abacare, obviously, kind of you made a big impression when you were at Abacare, even though it was a short period, Eddie, and you had the same kind of mentality and kind of experience, recovery, and the kind of the working side of that within a service and stuff. And obviously, a couple of years ago, we had you along to be a kind of keynote speaker as well, So I know Liam and the team as well hold you in high regard, Eddie, for what you do. So, Harbour, when did Harbour start and how did it start?
So it started, I was working back as being a navigator again. And I was actually, my niece had phoned me up. There was one, somebody who'd worked for, they'd all been furloughed during the lockdown in 2000, I think it was 22, it must have been. And the end of 2021, start of 2022, and I was delivering food parcels to one of her staff, who had 5 kids, and she'd nowhere getting any support. And she phoned me up, and I was taking a few food parcels to this lassie's house. And I got a phone call for Clive Kennedy. Clive's our co-founder, and he was our major funder to get this project up and running. Clive phoned me, and he was asking for a wee bit of advice. I'd worked in the field for 12 years at that time, and he was asking me what he thinks he should do. He wanted to do stuff in his local community. He'd done really well in his business, and he wanted to put a wee bit back into his community, which was great. He was doing some stuff in Glasgow, the homeless and things like that, but he wanted to do it down in Ayrshire. So I told him what I think would work in that, and our idea at the time was maybe to possibly open a rehab at that time. We're kind of get away from that now because we think the work we're doing in the community is good, and we've got 3 rehabs in Ayrshire now, so what we just look at is getting people to and from rehab and let the experts do what they've got to do. So anyway, after the conversation I had with Clive, 2 days later he phoned me up and he says, "How would you like to manage a project like this?" I went, "Give me 2 minutes," and I phoned my Christine at the time. I phoned Christine. I went, "Christine, how much notice do I need to put in?" And she says 4 weeks. And she tried to get me a wee bit longer. I says, "Listen, I've got the opportunity of a lifetime." I says, "I'm going to have to put my notice in." And I phoned Clive back up and I says, "We can start the project in 4 weeks." So in April, it's strange, Eddie, how things happen, isn't it? When I got clean, I was 10 days after methadone, and actually was a Narcotics Anonymous meeting down in Ayrshire at that time. And the Fullerton Connections, right? And I was in a wee annex building, and at 10 days clean, they gave me the keys in this annex building, right? And I'm like, that. Gave me the keys of a church at 10 days clean. What they going to give me when I'm 10 years clean, right? And actually, I was thinking to put statues and all that up for me, right? But actually, they're the keys of Irvine. But actually, what I got was I got the keys to Harbour Ayrshire office. So Clive phoned me up and said, "I've got your wee office." And Clive went up there in April 2022. He gave me the keys of the Harbour office, and him and I went in and we started Harbour. And it was like Karen McCluskey. I had Karen, who's the founder of Violence Reduction Unit, and a mentor of mine, and just an amazing person. I got her up to see it, and she wrote an article in the paper in the Guardian. It was, I think, or the Scotsman. It was later on. She says, "Eddie just said the premise: a building they will come," and that's exactly what happened. So 4 months later, in July the 4th, 2022, which is synonymous with Independence Day, and which is really relatable to what we do, because we believe that everybody deserves to live a life free from the misery, terror and pain of addiction. So basically we get charitable states in July 2022, and it all kind of just took off from there.
So starting a project, where do you start with that, Eddie? What's the first thing that's implemented, and how to support people? And
you Google what a constitution is, because that was somebody says you need a constitution. I says, right, okay, I need to go and find out what a constitution was. And again, what I've done, Eddie, is I tapped into people who came before me. So Charles has started an organisation, and our wee parliaments has started. And I says, can I get a look at your constitution? And we just developed it. And then all we've done, Eddie, from that is see all the experience. I mean, I navigated the services for 30 years. And then I've worked in the services for 12 years, so I've got a lot of knowledge about the services. And what we've tried to do at Harbour is we brought it, see all the stuff that I thought was effective and impactful. We brought all that and see the stuff that I thought doesn't work, like the bureaucracy and red tape that overseas services all tied in with now. We kind of left that where it was, mate. And we kind of, listen, and there's times where you've just tried your best at what you've got, but most of the time it's came from solid, evidence-led information that through my own experience or working and supporting people through a journey from crisis into some sort of stability.
So you're speaking there July 2022 when you became kind of charitable status and stuff like that. Fast forward the tape less than 4 years. What positions Harbour in now?
See if it's surpassed all our expectations. If I had a magic wand at the beginning, they says, "Here's your magic wand, this is what you think Harbour could look like, Eddie," I would have done myself short.
What did you picture it like at the beginning? What did you think you were going to be creating?
I don't know, Eddie. I've got absolutely no idea, to be honest with you. All I want to do, listen, and this is all I've ever wanted to do, all I wanted to do was help people. Now, see the lifestyle I led, the reason I've not got any guilt and shame for the lifestyle that I led, Eddie, and it was a horrific lifestyle, and a lot of people got hurt, right? And I was always used to think, how will I ever be able to make amends to a community that I decimated in my lifestyle? Harbour's helped me to do that, mate.
Yeah.
So all I've done is I've just put one foot in front of the other and try to help people the best way we could. The stuff that I didn't understand, I've asked people that's came before me and a wee bit of guidance for them. And for a year, it was me, and what we were using, we was heavy using volunteers with a lived experience. It was in recovery, and we tried to give them a wee bit of direction and purpose. And we opened couple of wee groups. And then in the second year, we get really when Harbour took off, actually. We got a couple of experts and we got enough funding for another couple of staff, and Vicky and Stacey came in, and that was the first two staff that worked with.
Vicky's here, by the way.
Vicky's here. I hear her chisking out there. She's all proud to hear that. But it's true.
Yeah.
I'm not telling any lies. It's true. We had a worker in there for the Thrive project. Sorry, no, the Thrive project. It was a South Ayrshire of all projects. She was here part-time, and she helped us. We had another volunteer, wee Chris Fearing. Jane was a worker, and wee Chris was brilliant at setting getting our systems in place and that. And with a funding guy, which helped dramatically. Clive managed to get a guy to come and work part-time as one day a week. Andrew, who's just absolutely phenomenal at his job. So really, like any good manager, Ed, I was taught, Keith Jack again taught me, he says, good management is getting people in round about you that can do stuff that you can't do. And that's kind of what I've done. You know what I mean? We've got really good people, and everybody at Harbour, we've all got the same ethos. The culture's all the same. We just want to make a difference in our community. Yeah. So when Vicky and Stacey came in, it kind of took off after that. Vicky started with the volunteer coordinator. We increased the number of volunteers, and we had Stacey. But we're all just doing wee bits and pieces of outreach and stuff like that. And then we get Stacey out doing outreach, and I would help her, and Vicky would work with the volunteers. And that basically is the mainstay of our organisation.
Yep. So, how has the community? Have you had a lot of support from the local community regarding Harbour? What about kind of feedback maybe from services that's in the area that you work alongside now and stuff like that? How has Ayrshire reacted to Harbour?
Yeah. Well, the size it now, Eddie. So the size of Harbour is now, right? We've got 14 peer support groups. We're just going to open another online family group. We've got 4 men's groups. We've got 4 women's groups, we've got a mixed group, we've got an online support group, and we've got 3 family groups. And we're just going to have an online family group as well. So we've got that. We've got a community support vehicle that helps people in the community that's fleeing violence or homeless. We'll help them to get moved when they're in crisis. We've got an out-of-hours helpline, which will hopefully leave the number with you before we go. Yeah. That's the office number that gets diverted. So anybody that's in crisis will phone us when the services close at 5 o'clock, Monday to Friday. Our office number gets diverted to a helpline number. It's staffed by a trained volunteer who then takes a call for people in crisis and try and get them into support. And that's Monday to Friday, 5 to 10, and Saturday, Sunday, it's 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So we've got all these services so really, if you think about that, Eddie, you can't just do that yourself. No. You need support. Yeah. You need support for your other services, your partner organisations, Abacare being one of them, who's been great with us. They've been fantastic. Anytime we ask to do anything together, it's always successful. We're referring people on to and getting referred people back, obviously, through the pathways. So we've got a lot of partner organisation, because if we know that drugs and alcohol is only a symptom of what people suffer from. What we need to do is get the support for the underlying issues. So we need to look at housing, we need to look at mental health, you need to look at trauma. So we've got partners for all the different issues. So Harbour couldn't be where it is today if we weren't so good at working alongside other people to get where we needed to get. So in the community, you were asking about the community as well. We've actually got a My Hearts with Harbour campaign, which is local businesses that can donate money towards us every month. Right. And that just helps. What we've tried to do is diversify the risk of our funding drying up here and there. So we've got a lot of different things. We've got funding for all different sources and different trusts and things like that. But what we try to do is access our own funding through My Hearts with Harbour. So that's all local businesses. It's seen our social media that like what we're doing in our communities. They know we want to make a difference, and the local businesses want to help us. Some of the businesses can donate up to 25 to 250 quid a month. Yeah, and that helps us with some general running costs of the organisation, because it's like any third sector organisation or lived experience organisation, is that we're always strapped for funds. We're always looking for funds. We live for year to year. That's one of the big issues that we might go on to. going forward. It's one of the challenges for third sector and lived experience organisation that we've not got the security.
Yeah.
We basically live year to year.
And I think it's the amazing thing about Harbour as well, Eddie, because sometimes we think a recovery service, in the olden days, was maybe just turning up and there's a group a week or something and you attend or something. Harbour's really kind of developed and spread itself out. The number of volunteers, 60 volunteers you have on your books as well. But there's also that kind of community kind of focus stuff as well, isn't it? When you're speaking about kind of maybe people that's homeless, people that's in poverty, people that's fleeing violence, whatever that may be. I mean, that takes a lot of services to do that work that you are doing within Harbour, and I just want to kind of off my hat to all of yous there, for the work you're doing, which areas are screaming out for, isn't it? Areas are screaming out, but when you think about over 3.5 years, that's been achievable. But again, as we'll move on to as well, that can all go as well, can't it?
Absolutely.
Due to finances and funding and stuff like that. So Harbour been a massive, massive factor in the amount of people in Ayrshire who are accessing help now. Do we see it a lot at Abacare as well? Lots of referrals from Ayrshire or vice versa, referring back to yourselves, because we've got 100% faith in Harbour. When you go to Harbour, there's an opportunity there to involve and develop and get trained as well, volunteer and on the pathway back into employability as well, So we know that's going to be the offer for people once they return back to their local community and stuff. So if we think about, we were speaking earlier before here regarding the kind of the landscape in Scotland, you can never speak about addiction or recovery in Scotland without Scottish drug deaths, it's everywhere, isn't it? And the kind of the clashing and kind of different approaches, what works, what doesn't work, etc., and stuff like that. What do you feel Harbour's role is in that for improving Scotland's well-being regarding recovery from addiction?
No, listen, you said it there, but the stats we've got now for the drug-related deaths and drug harms as well, it's horrific. Yeah. And behind every death, there's a family member, there's a loved one, there's a mother, there's a father, there's a son, a daughter. And we experience it. We've obviously, any of you work in this field, you're going to experience you're losing loved ones for yourself or losing people you're supported in your service and loved ones as well. Do you know what I mean? So it's horrific. In fact, I've experienced it firsthand. A mother who a boy we were supporting asked me to actually carry the coffin into the crematorium, and I did. Obviously, it was a privilege to do that for the family. And I sat in the second row, I sat behind the mother, and that. The wails of a mother who's lost her son, who's grieving for a son, Eddie, if I never hear that again, it'll be too soon. So I absolutely get the pain that people go through with that. So where I see Harbour with that is we're an abstinence-based organisation, Ed, and I will never waver for that. It's no that we're against harm reduction, because I'm no. Look, 35-40% of our caseload is either on harm reduction or working towards harm reduction. People need to be alive for us to support them. So it's no that it's a them or us, because it isn't. I believe Scotland's model at the moment is heavy focused on harm reduction. And I truly believe that that's going to change soon by watching organisations or us feeding the outcomes and the evidence-led practices that we've got and the successes that we're getting, and passing that back up to the people who's going to change the policies. I believe that's going to change. But we all need to be working together, Eddie.
Yes.
The problem that we're facing is absolutely huge. And no one service can do it itself. We all need to be working together. The problem's too great to say that the model that I use is greater than the model you use. The reason I use abstinence-based, or Harbour uses abstinence-based recovery, is because it's worked for me personally, and I see it work for a lot of other people. You asked me a question at the start of this, is what was the recovery like in Ayrshire when you started? And it was, I says, very sparse. So when I got clean, the reason what happened was, I says to my first sponsor, he asked me, I says to him, I went, how me ever going to get all this guilt and shame for how I've lived my life? Because that's one of the mitigating factors, Eddie, that keeps you in the cycle. The guilt and shame you experience for how you're living your life, your life, takes you back to drink drugs. So he says to me, you open a meeting in your local community. Right, so what I done is I traipsed down and I spoke to people who'd open meetings in Glasgow, and doing an open one in my local community. Doing in Ayrshire at the moment, there's 28 meetings. So it was kind of that all the ducks have just lined up in a row for Harbour to be successful. There's got to be a need for something to be successful, especially as quickly as Harbour's been. But everything that was in place for it to happen, Eddie. So where I see Harbour at this stage is we're right at the centre of everything that we're doing. And we're working alongside the statutory services, we're working alongside the rehabs. We've got Abacare, who I believe is a flagship rehab in Scotland, and I don't like to say the best one because I've not got a lot of experience with other ones, but we like it. But work a lot with other ones. River Gardens just opened down there. We're working in partnership with them. We've got a couple of people in there now. Calder Glen's the same, and Steps to Hope through in Edinburgh. So we work alongside all the statutory services. I just want to be working with people to make a difference in our community. And for us to do that, we all just need to get together and stop thinking that what I'm doing is better than what you're doing. If people come into Harbour in their own harm reduction, then we'll support them to work to abstinence, work towards abstinence. And if they're not wanting to be abstinent, we'll defer them onto a service that deals with harm reduction, because that's what we've got, and that's giving people an option. A lot of times, Eddie, when I do presentation to funders, right, I actually see them lighting up. I can see them sitting on the edge of their chair when I'm talking about the stuff we're doing at Harbour and the outcomes we're having, right? And see, when I mention abstinence, it's like they get deflated. It's as if and they're like, aye, but we need to give people a choice. And absolutely I agree, we need to give people a choice. One of the choices that we need to offer people is abstinence. So you spoke a minute ago about the bridge to shore, the success we were getting in employment. So Vicky developed a project, the Bridge to Shore project we call it, which has 5 stages of it, which we get people from crisis into full-time employment. That's the goal. So we do the interventions and get stabilisation period. Then we bring them into Harbour after they've built a wee bit of support, their NME network, recovery network, and then we get them into helping with Harbour when they get to a period after away for the substance, because there needs to be that. You know what I mean? There needs to be support in place. And we get them into Harbour at 30 days and they start becoming a Harbour helper, where there's no lot of expectations on them. They'll turn up, set the group up, make teas and coffees, tell the person that's coming in the door how they go to 30 days, a bit of peer support there as well, with no expectations on them. With a wee bit of training, try to build their self-esteem and confidence. But once they get to 6 months and they've got that network in place, then Vicky starts really getting them involved in training and upskilling them and training them for interviews and building their confidence and self-esteem, mock interviews. No, it's phenomenal, by the way. We've got access for funding to get them closed, and it's just amazing, actually. And the success we've had is off the charts, actually. Last year we get 51 people, not everybody through the Bridge to Shore. It was 29 volunteers through the Bridge to Shore and into employment. Now, some of them were only on short-term sick, but we know short-term sick leads to long-term sick, which leads to unemployment, which leads to a cycle of chaos. But some of them hadn't worked for years, and some of them had never worked in their lives. So that Bridge to Shore model is hugely successful. You know, it's like massive. So 53 people last year into employment, 21 into education. For a small organisation like Harbour, the numbers are off the charts.
Amazing. It's absolutely amazing, Eddie. And can I take you back a wee bit there around about that kind of approach regarding abstinence, kind of based recovery and stuff? A lot of people speak about abstinence-based recovery like it was in the past, where you're just taking somebody without any support of all drugs, you know, and just being left to themselves. And that is high risk. We know that that's high risk. That's happened. But through our own experience and through our kind of line of work and through what we do in recovery, we know that we can get round people and give them the tools to manage the early stages. You spoke about it yourself with that. And sometimes it feels a wee bit, do you think, Eddie, like these people don't really give 100% trust that we kind of know what we're talking about, you know, sometimes. And it's like, sometimes it goes against us, you know, if people have achieved abstinence-based recovery in an anonymous fellowship. Not everybody's seen, are they? Not everybody's there. And I think that's why it's so important that people like yourself who are like seen in a service like to voice that kind of stuff. It's like how many people have you seen just personally, Eddie, over the years who's come into abstinence-based recovery and not only changed their life around regarding their using or stuff, but went on to achieve absolutely amazing things like yourself and many others round about us, And it's sometimes you really feel as if you could say to people, look, I could round up 100 people now, that went on to do amazing things. There's thousands and thousands more. And I always like to say as well, when I speak about harm reduction, abstinence is the, the most perfect form of harm reduction.
Mm.
Abstinence is that, isn't it?
Mm.
That is harm reduction. And it's like, yeah, of course, there's a path of harm reduction. You spoke about it yourself, coming down and being prescribed it. But we've all probably been there at some point. Anything's harm reduction, isn't it? I mean, if you stop using on top of your script, then coming down off your script or your prescription or whatever, of course, there's a place for that. But there needs to be faith in services like your own that you know what you're doing when people finally put the drugs down.
And I think that'll come, Eddie. I think there's definitely a mindset change. And I think that only happens through people seeing outcomes
Yeah.
and evidence-led practice. The powers that be, the policymakers, are not going to change anything unless they see evidence-based
Mhm.
options. But you said there about the amount of people that we've seen change their life.
Mhm.
No, it's like we get very blasé about it in
I know.
recovery, by the way, because you actually see miracles.
Yeah.
Look, we support people who are coming in intravenous heroin users for 20 years, homeless, estranged from their families, and just burnt their life to the ground. And then we come in here in a very short period of time. You get to watch them recreating their life.
Yeah.
And if I go back to, and I don't want to take any credit for opening that meeting and doing an Ayrshire, the first meeting in Ayrshire, because I honestly don't believe I was much today, but I kind of run out of building. It was in fire, and everything else with them was put in my path.
Mhm.
But since then, there's now 27 RSAs or 27 or 26, 27 meetings down there, right? If you go to some of the meetings, Eddie, there's numbers up to 40, 50. Some of the bigger ones is getting 70, 80 people a week.
Mhm.
Now, you're right, it's anonymous and people don't see that, so you're not going to get to see that. But I have introduced that. I've took all sorts of people, open meetings, it's allowed to go to them,
Mhm.
to let them experience what happens
Totally.
in an absence-based organisation. And I know people that come into recovery, the untapped source that we've got are good employees. No,
Mhm.
the people, since Vicky started with the Bridge to Shore project, we've had 22 people that's went through our Bridge to Shore project who now work in the health and social care field.
Amazing.
In a small organisation like Harbour,
Yeah.
22 people had. So they people were lost. They were going to
Mhm.
be, dependent on services, a drain on the public purse.
Mhm.
And now they're away helping people in their because let's be honest, they're the experts in the fields, aren't they? They know that
Mhm.
lived experience. Listen, we say this as well, and I don't really want to get into a debate about lived experience and professional experience, but sometimes when I'm presenting, I say that the truth is that I've got lived experience pals who I wouldn't let watch my budgie,
Yeah.
right?
Aye.
Who work in this field, right?
Totally.
And I've got professionals who I trust my life with.
Yeah.
But the reality is, the problem we're facing again is too big for us to say that mine's is better than yours. The
Mhm.
clinical model and the absence-based model or recovery, whatever recovery you're doing,
Mhm.
should be working side by side and hand by hand. And see if we do that, well, better outcomes for everybody. But
Yeah.
but sometimes we're maybe not seen as at that level yet. But I think that's definitely changing over time.
Definitely. And you were speaking there about the outcomes of uh, your services. That's what people's going to notice, isn't it? And as much as myself and you and other people know the amount of people that's moving on with life through kind of abstinence based recovery and other walks of life, it'll be gauged through who comes through our services, won't it? And I always say that one. I've never met a client in Abacare who's leaving at the end of their treatment stay abstinent who regretted getting abstinent.
Absolutely.
What happens when they return to the community is different when they're back there, but they've always been delighted that they've managed to put down a substance. So what I'm getting at, it's all about the care and support that they receive when they're
Absolutely.
returning back to the community, and Harper's definitely ticks all the boxes as well. So drug deaths, etc. Do you do you notice, not just within Ayrshire and the work you're doing, do you notice changes in Scotland's kind of approach to what we're trying to achieve by reducing these drug deaths and offering better care and support?
I think there is. I think there is. I think there's a lot of different options now. There's certainly a lot of money flowing in. There could be more, obviously, but there could always be more money. I'm seeing a difference. I'm seeing it. The people that's making the decisions, when I speak to them, they get what we're trying to do. They understand what we're trying to do. They know the impact that Leros are having, that a lived experience organisation are having in the community. They know and they want to support us, and they're doing all sorts to try and do that. So I believe there is a difference. We're working closely with the statutory services down in Ayrshire. We're getting a good relationship with the statutory services, which I think needs to happen. But that's only going to evolve over time, because they've done what they've done and we've done what we've done, and our service have done what they've done. But the problem is that a lot of people working in silos has an impact on the relationships getting built and strengthened. But I think that's definitely changing now, Eddie.
Yeah.
You know, there's a Nadars down in Ayrshire has got a lived experience kind of project, basically, where they've got 8 lived experience, where they've got them in the community doing outreach, and they're doing fantastic. They started with a Hepatitis C Scotland, had them out doing the BBV test, and they smashed the numbers that they were getting people coming in to engage, and they've seen the impact that could have. So they've got that in there. So that the other services, South and East Ayrshire, starting to have lived experience here, but North is a wee bit in front of them. But we're working, the statutory services are seeing the impact that people with lived experience can have, and that's good for the relationships.
Yeah.
I was actually down in Nottingham last week. Myself and Clive and Andrew went down to Nottingham. We got invited down with a charity down there. It was one of our funders' brothers has a charity down in Nottingham, and started similar to Harbour Ayrshire. Was a couple of guys wanted to make a difference, and they started doing this. And the work they're doing down there is just phenomenal. It's a different model they use down there. It's a commission model, but they commission the third sector organisations. And it goes straight to them, which I think is the way forward. I think we should be looking at commission services like Harbour, not just because I'm Harbour, but because I think that's the way forward. But they're doing that down there, so the impact they're having down there is great. We were doing visiting Double Impact, and they've got a cafe. It's like a really nice cause to us, where they've got people working in it that's came through their service and all that. And not everybody wants to work in recovery. No. Some people want different jobs, but they've got 100 staff, and they took us to a place, actually, and this is the reason I wanted to tell you this, Eddie. It was called the Wellbeing Centre. And it was 2 charities that ran it in the NHS, 3 of them in partnership. The 3 of them had an equal voice in this partnership. Now, whatever your issue is regarding any social issues, addiction, mental health, if you wanted abstinence, if you wanted, whatever this case may be, it was all under one roof. And they were all equal partners. And it took my breath away, actually. I was speechless when I seen what was going on. It was phenomenal. Like, every single service was all working together. There wasn't any them and not just with lived experience or professional experience. You could just see that these guys had a good relationship, and they were having a huge impact. One of the girls that came in to tell us her story, she came in January the 2nd for alcoholism, and 21 days later she was going to rehab. You know what I mean? Amazing. So every single issue that you could think of, that people suffering for that lifestyle could get that in one place, either from a psychiatrist for the NHS, or from a lived experience practitioner that could take you to a meeting. Abstinence, there was an academy doing this year. It actually took my breath away, and we're miles behind that. But I think the more conversation we're having, getting out there, because I have had a lot of support for different services, statutory service organisation. Everybody knows that we're trying to make a difference, and the more conversation we're having, the more work we can do together with partners, is the more impact we're going to have going forward.
Oh, amazing. And it's really a bit forward thinking, isn't it? Okay. Just thinking, Eddie, if somebody down in Ayrshire in your kind of catchment area or whatever is struggling themselves at the moment with addiction, doesn't know where to turn, what kind of advice could yourself and Harbour give to them? What's the starting point? You know, it can be really difficult. We take it as granted that people know where we are and what we do. What would Harbour's kind of, how do you contact Harbour? What's the best way to engage with you? How do you get there?
So it's like any journey. It's a journey 1,000 miles starts with one step. My journey in the recovery started by picking the phone up. And that's the best way to contact Harbour. In fact, I'll get the number.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably should know this off the top of my head, but I'm old. So if anybody's looking for a wee bit of support or any type of support, and this is a family member as well, the reason we've got the family support groups is because 50% of our phone calls that we're receiving was from family members looking for support for a loved one. And the best answer I could give them at that time, Eddie, was we may or may not be able to help your loved one depending on where they're at, because it doesn't matter how good your service is, Eddie. That's the solution, right?
Yeah.
If you've not got the gift of desperation, the solution's no good to you.
Totally.
Yeah. So what we decided to do after that was open a family group, and now we've got 3 really successful family groups. As biggest numbers as our family groups, by the way. We get 20 to 25 members at each family group, all supporting each other and learning a wee bit about addiction. And Vicky actually developed a 12-week or an 8-week workshop that takes the family members through a workshop, teach them a wee bit about more addiction with on the premise that if you understand addiction more, you can be more effective at helping your loved one. And that the evidence stands that, because our evidence suggests that, because when I done evaluation for last year, the family members who were attending the groups who'd been through Vicky's workshop, 60% of loved ones were in a better place because they had been through a workshop. So they get that, and then they get taught about boundaries and how to have self-care and self-management, and then they offer resources for other supports they can get going forward. So that's been a really, really successful. I think there's just over 130 people they've took through that workshop now. So that's really, really good. So if you're looking, anybody's looking to reach out for support for themselves or support for a loved one, I'll just give you the number on the head. So the Harbour office number is you'll get that Monday to Friday 95, and that's 01292, and it's 623 016, and out hours Monday to Friday 5 to 10. That'll be your helpline number where you can speak to a volunteer with lived experience. And a Saturday and Sunday, that's 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. That helpline's manned. If anybody's looking for a wee bit of support, give us a phone and you'll get a chat to somebody who understands what you're going through.
And we were speaking about it earlier as well. You've got a lot of kind of information spread across social media pages and stuff like that as well, haven't you? So if anybody wants to kind of look on there for more information about the different groups and stuff that run as well, you could go onto your Facebook page or whatever and can get in touch as well. Okay, Eddie, we're nearly coming to the end there. So I asked you earlier, we spoke about not particularly your favourite song, but one significant song for your life that you would choose. You already had one planned. What's the name of the song?
The first one that came to mind, Ed, was Tom Walker, Leave the Lights On.
Yeah, okay. So why this track, Eddie?
Well, the reason for that is, and it's kind of the Harbour theme tune, we use it everywhere we go. When the guys are out in the community support vehicle, you get them singing that and stuff like that. And it's like Harbour's you said the word earlier on, Ed, it's Harbour's a community. We've created a community, right? So we're a community. We're a community of kindred spirits. And everybody coming together we're like a lighthouse. Have you been in my office, Ed? No? So you've seen the light, the picture I've got, a lighthouse climb, they call it, So I believe Harbour's a lighthouse. If you look into distance, there's a house upon the hill. I believe that's Harbour. When we shine a light into the darkness of addiction and we illuminate pathways into recovery.
Amazing.
So if we've all made mistakes, and that's what that song's all about, is about making mistakes and coming back, and there's people there for you to support you. And that's what happened to me, Eddie, my personal journey. And that's what's happened to me when I was ready to come into work in this field. People showed up that could help me, and then when we started Harbour, we were there to help people that want to come in. So leave the lights on. We'll always try and leave the lights on for people who's caught up in the darkness of addiction, because addiction can be a very dark place, Eddie. And I believe Harbour shines a light on that darkness.
Definitely, and it's been an amazing journey, your own journey, Eddie, in that at Harbour, and I'm sure it will just continue, keep going through strength for strength. Would that not be right? In that picture down in your office, does it not say shelter from a storm on the picture as well?
There's a big story behind that as well, but it says we've got
I thought you were going to go with that track, that's why. You know what I mean?
We come up with a name, and I've not got a creative bone in my body, and I was coming up with some crazy names. One of them was, I'm not going to tell you what they were, right? But somebody come up, and we still don't know who. Few have took credit for it, but we don't really know who came up with the name Harbour.
Right.
But what we do know for sure is when we come up with the name Harbour, our designing guy Gordon Mott, who is an absolute genius by the way, does all our designing. You'll see it on Facebook. And as soon as somebody says Harbour, and Gordon just turns and says, "Your shelter from the storm of addiction." And that's what it is. Yeah. And we've also, you asked where they can reach you as well. We've got big on social media, big on Facebook, and Vicky does the TikTok stuff and that as well. But we've also got a website. You can see exactly what's happening at Harbour and what we're doing. And that's harbourayrshire.co.uk if anybody wants to look us up, Ed.
Amazing, Eddie. Thank you so much for coming along today, Eddie. Thanks for your friendship, and great to see you again. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for having us, mate. Cheers.